Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Perspectal Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, in episode 2, we are talking about philosophy and methodology. So, this idea came to me in a conversation that I had with a friend of mine, who I will call B, at a coffee shop. And we were talking about different things. Really, we had no, predetermined topic. We were just hanging out and having a chat. And some of the things I was talking about, in my mind, I was talking about why I would do something. And what I was understanding from B is that what she was listening for, what she was trying to get, was how I did it so she could repeat it, I think. And I was kind of in this place where I was trying to explain that if you focus too much on exactly how to do this, you're going to miss the opportunity to do it because you'll never know why you would do it. So you really wouldn't know when the appropriate place to apply the how is. And we got pretty deep into kind of the differences between these two things and provided a lot of examples. It was a good conversation, but today is a podcast, and we are going to talk about these two words, philosophy and methodology. And I thought before we get too much into it, I'm going to spit out some definitions so we can get kind of a baseline. And this is off Google, and I just type in the words. They just give me these definitions. And the definition of philosophy is the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, especially considered as an academic discipline. And to this, the study of knowledge, I really, to sum it up as simply as I can, I really think this is just why. The whole act of philosophy to me is why, and don't just do things, try to know why you do things, and that side of doing things has been very interesting to me, and I know if you know me, sometimes I do have a bias against trying to know why rather than just doing stuff, but that's just me. And then we have methodology, which is a system of methods used in a particular area of study or activity, and it's a system of methods, and to this, I really think it's how. It's how you do things, exactly what are the steps. You do step A, step B, step C, and then you're done. And this is important. I think learning methods, learning methodology, learning how to do things is important. But as we're going to see in this podcast today, I also have some opinions about the dangers of only learning how to do something without learning why. Because, I mentioned in the coffee shop conversation I had, if you don't know why you're doing something, you could be very good at how to do it, but you may not do it in the right place or in the right way, and you may not need to do it at all. Because if you looked at, why am I doing this? Does this apply? Is this the right thing to do? The answer may be no. And even though you know how to do something, it may not be the right thing to do. So along those lines, I think that how and why are related, and they're both important. I often think that how is the thing you learn first. So if you're in a martial arts class or an art class or even a math class, there is a certain amount of instruction that happens where people tell you what to do, but often you're taught certain sequences. So in martial arts, you're taught punch, punch, duck, kick. And you do this over and over and over and over and over and over, depending on your martial art. That's very general kind of synopsis of martial arts. But in art, maybe you're working on shading, and you're working on the gradient of shading, and it's about lifting your pencil as you move across the paper to lessen and lessen the amount of pencil that you put on the paper. and you're trying to learn how to do that. And then in math, like let's say it's like you're learning trigonometry, and you're learning the law of sines, and you're just practicing the law and sines in various like homework problems, and you're doing it over and over and over, and you know that you're supposed to apply the law of sines because it's the chapter for law of sines, and you're just practicing how to use it in different applications, and you're sharpening your tools. You're sharpening your knife in the martial arts case, in the art case, in the math case, and that's good, and that's, I think, a really important part of having knowledge is knowing how to do things. And I think that oftentimes that's where we start, or we start in some kind of combination of the how and why, where we have an instructor and they're kind of showing us how and why at the same time. But I think ultimately when we, as humans, are kind of learning ourselves, I think humans do very well to learn by doing, and that is the how, I think. And in the repetition of the how, like in the math example where you're doing 20 homework problems and they're all a little bit different, but they all use the law of sines. By knowing how to do in this situation and how to do in that situation and how to do in this third situation, you start getting this idea of why you would do it. And then later down the road, you can get to any problem and you can say, hey, this looks like a law of sines problem. Let me apply that. And that comes from a lot of the repetition of the how, or a lot of sharpening of the knife. Similarly, in martial arts, you do the punch, punch, duck, kick, punch, punch, duck, kick. And if you're somebody who is not good at martial arts, typically it's very hard to exactly replicate all your movements every time. So if you do this sequence of moves like 1,000 times in a row, it's probably going to be different in 1,000 ways. And they might be very slight ways. You might, be off balance a little bit that time. You might kick a little too high that time. You might duck a little bit slower that time. And you are practicing how to do this thing, but by doing it over and over and over and doing it in slightly different ways, you're learning why it's good to do it a certain way and why maybe it's not so good to do a different way, and why you need to really plant your foot down, or why you really need to use your hips when you punch, or whatever it is. And by doing the how over and over and over, you start to develop the why. And then in the art example, for shading, it's like maybe you're practicing shading because that's the thing you were doing in class and you start getting good at it, but there's a big difference between knowing how to shade technically and then knowing where shading applies in art. And it's cool if you know how to shade and you can like copy a picture exactly, like if somebody shows you a sketch of something that's shaded and then you reproduce a sketch that's shaded, that's great. And I think the more you do it in different ways, a lot like with the math example, and you start getting kind of a handle of it, and then you can start breaking away from sketches and looking at like maybe real life or watercolor or different mediums or sculptures, and like see light in real life, and then use what you know about all the different ways that you shaded to try and recreate what you're seeing in real life. And in this, I think that how and why are very connected. But if you're too focused on the how and you're not focused on the why, when you're doing all those punches and those kicks and those ducks, if you're not focused on, oh, this was a little bit to the left, oh, this was a little bit to the right, why was it like that? Oh, it's because I wasn't standing the same way. Oh, it's because I'm slouching because I'm tired. And if you're not focusing on that why stuff, you don't really understand the conditions that are producing the results, or the conditions in which you want to act and have the optimal results come out, because you're setting yourself up for success. And by practicing over and over and learning all the little differences and making mistakes and trying new things and getting frustrated, I think the why comes out kind of naturally. In this, I would say that the how in my mind, is a lot of like the training side of knowledge. It's the practice part where you're learning exactly how to act in specific situations, and you're learning how not to act also in situations. So like when you're punching, you're learning to like put your arm straight. You're learning to lean into the punch. You're learning to know where to look when you're punching, and things like that. When you're training, by doing it over and over and over. And training and how are more like a statement. It's like, I'm doing this. I am going to shade. I am going to use the law of signs. I am going to duck. And then when you think about the why I think is less of being trained or doing training, and it's more of being taught or doing teaching, where it's about asking questions. And there is I have to do something, this is how I do it, but there's a thought before and after and during. There's this analysis of what's going on, kind of like why am I in this situation in the first place? Why do I think this is a good thing to do? What will happen because I did this? And are there any like future things that I need to worry about because I did this? And sometimes the answer is no. So like sometimes when you do a math problem, if you do the law of signs and it doesn't work out, then you kind of just start over and no big deal. I guess you wasted some time. Maybe it's the law of cosines, or maybe it's something else. Maybe you got to do an integral or something. But there are other times where if you do not think about why you would do something, it can put you in kind of a sticky situation. And I think martial arts is a very good example of this, where in class, a lot of the times you get trained to do specific sequences, like I said before, and you practice, and maybe you have a partner, and the partner does their part of the sequence. You go like punch, punch, duck, kick, and then the partner, they'll go like dodge, dodge, punch, dodge. And you guys are alternating doing that. But in a real fight, if you do that sequence and expect the person that you're fighting to do the opposite sequence, because that's what you trained, that's how you do it, you will probably get surprised most of the time to find out that most people are looking at what you're doing and trying to figure out how to catch you off guard. They're trying to figure out why you're doing something. They're trying to figure out what you're going to do next. And they're trying to figure out why they would do something. If he punches, then I'm going to dodge, and I got to look at him, because if he's not paying attention, I'm probably going to hit him with this. And there's these kind of thoughts that are coming across in real time, and I think these are based a lot on this practice of training and learning the different ins and outs, and having your partner train with you, and them do the opposite thing a little bit different each time. And so you learning, okay, when they punch a little bit this way, I got to dodge a little harder. And how do I know they're going to punch a little bit more that way? Oh, because I see their foot is stomps down a little bit harder. So when I see the weight on that foot more, I got to dodge harder, or something like that. And that's learning kind of like the ins and outs of why you would do something. And that can be very important in not getting hurt or kind of avoiding sticky situations. So I think that when it comes to learning something or having knowledge, I think that's what this whole kind of episode is driving at, which is like obtaining knowledge. I think there is a kind of a danger in focusing too much on one thing. And in the case of focusing too much on how, if you're really methodology focused, like I need to learn exactly how to do this, please tell me what are the steps. I need all 5 steps and then I'll be good. If you're focused too much on the methodology, then the danger of that is you're assuming that the situation in real life is going to be exactly the situation that you trained in. And that's almost never the case. So when you're focusing too much on methodology, you're kind of boxing yourself in or painting yourself into a corner where you're assuming that when you go out into real life, it's going to be exactly like it was in the classroom. And that is correct sometimes, but I would say most of the time you are going to encounter some difficulty with that. And then with the philosophy side, with the why side, I think if you focus too much on philosophy or why you would do something, which is definitely me, this is I guess kind of the one I fall into more often than not, is you never learn how to do anything because you're too focused on why you would do it. And sometimes it's interesting how it kind of takes the other one to learn the first one. So if you want to learn why, you kind of got to do the how. And if you want to learn how, you kind of got to do the why. And if you focus too much on one, then you don't get the one you want because you kind of need to do both to get either. And so by focusing too much on the why and going, and running all these thought experiments and never actually putting the rubber to the road, never actually throwing a punch, never actually putting your pen to paper, never actually trying the problem and getting it wrong, you learn a lot less typically. And then when it gets to the real situation, you may know exactly why you should do it, but do you know how? And so if somebody's throwing a punch at me, I'm like, oh, I know why he's punching me. It's probably because he's mad. And then I get hit. And I didn't learn how to diffuse a situation. I didn't learn how to dodge the punch or how to fight back. I learned why this was important. So I think there's a danger in focusing too much on either one. And in that, there is this element of balance that's important to this concept of knowledge when you're looking at it in terms of philosophy and methodology. But I do think both are important, and there are cases where you can look at one as more important than the other, or I guess maybe you're like me and you lean on one more than the other one, maybe because it's more interesting or you're more naturally apt to that. But I think when you use both, when you use the training and the teaching, and I think anybody that's a teacher or an instructor should balance the way that they instruct with some training where you're teaching people how to do things. Don't ask questions, just do this. And it helps them with the actually doing things. And then you also have some teaching and you allow questions and you get them to think critically and like do things that you didn't tell them exactly what to do. I think both are important to reach knowledge. And in this, I think this goal that I'm describing of knowledge that comes from knowing how and why and practicing both and thinking about both is it's the ability to recognize an opportunity and then act on that opportunity. So it's to know why and then know how. It's to recognize the opportunity and apply your training. And I think ultimately without philosophy or without knowing why we do things, it is difficult to tell if we are doing what is appropriate or if what we're doing will work. And the why takes much longer than how often. Like I said in the beginning, sometimes it feels like you're just doing repetitive training or you're not getting it even though your hand can do it in terms of like math problems, or maybe you can sketch something but you're not even sure why this is working. Or maybe even with music, you're like playing this but you're not really sure why it sounds good. You just know that it sounds good, but you keep doing it and you keep doing it and you keep doing it and you get a better understanding of it, you get a better feel of it, whatever it is. And it often leads you to this more harmonious balance of how and why. I think when you have too much of one and not enough of the other, or not enough of either one, you don't always feel comfortable in what you're acting on. But when you have a good amount of both, especially for a lot of skills, there's kind of like this this level where once you reach it, it feels like you know the thing and you can get better at it, but you're comfortable in it. And once you get comfortable in knowing why and knowing how for a certain particular topic, it's something that feels really good, and it becomes like one of the things that is part of your life. I think I think we all have friends and family and even ourselves where we kind of either in our minds or outwardly define them as some activity or some skill. Like, oh, my friend's a painter. Oh, this guy is a cyclist. Oh, this guy is an engineer. And I think we do this because those people have worked and practiced and thought about these things enough to reach this stage where they've come past this threshold and it's become a part of them because they know the how and the why good enough. And it's not as if they could never get better at it, but they know it in a way where it's kind of become something they can work with and build on. And then it's something that we kind of know people for. So I think knowledge is the goal. I think knowledge is great, and I think everybody should seek knowledge. And really what I'm trying to say here in this podcast is if you are trying to seek knowledge, and this could be any type of knowledge. It could be like brain knowledge or like muscle memory or body knowledge. It could be like spiritual knowledge, whatever you're going after. I think it's important to know why you're doing something and know how you're doing something so that, number one, you can have a good appreciation for it. That's a great word. I love the word appreciation. And you can really know what you're doing and not put yourself in a pickle because you don't understand the implications of your actions or your thoughts or your transactions. I think this happens a lot when people know how really good but not why. They can get themselves into trouble with their actions. And then when you know why really well but not how, then you don't get any trouble, but you don't get anything done because you don't know how to do anything. So that's pretty much it. This is episode 2 of the Perspective Podcast. It is about philosophy and methodology, or how and why, which I think are important concepts in knowledge, but they need to be balanced depending on the type of knowledge you're trying to get. And I hope this sparked some thought for you guys. If you have some comments about it, you can reach me on my Instagram at @JordanTremaine_, and I'd love to talk to you about this concept. Is very interesting to me, especially when people bring up their real life anecdotes of their experience with the how and the why, or how they fought with one or the other. Those are always really interesting to me. If you want to get at me, you have an idea for the show, or you want to, give me a thumbs up or give me your opinion, whatever, you can find me on Instagram, and I will see you guys next time.